All set, Charles? Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So glad to be able to see you all this morning. It was not great coming out, so, but it's much better now. But thank you all for, braving the New England winter to come and join us. This is fabulous to have everybody with us. Sue reminded me that when we were finishing our project and getting ready for our move in, the first thing that we did, the first event that we had here was men's breakfast. And we had men's breakfast because we had cleaned the kitchen. Sue and Esther, Kirsten and I had organized, we had dishes in, and we said, and nothing else is done. Nothing else is done. We hadn't moved our offices or the rest of our equipment, but we said, we can have men's breakfast here. We're going to go for it. So this is like our anniversary. And then next week, we moved into the facility on February 6th, which was then we were in the middle of a blizzard. The IT guys showed up and said, we're here to move your computers. I said, when? He said, because we were in the middle of doing things, and he said, do you need a few minutes? I'll be back in 20 minutes. And then they came and took our computers. And then, as we're taking our computers apart, the school department came and said, it's going to snow. It's snowing now. We're going to take your furniture. I said, oh, okay. So we literally, that was how we started moving everything. And then we really, if you remember, we got hit with that blizzard. But so it's been a year. It's just been incredible. And we're just, we're constantly still so grateful to be here and to have all of you with us. And, and I really thought and knew in terms of our planning from what we were seeing that, once we had the facility done and we'd be in place, that you'd all be able to join us. And that's what we had seen. We've seen people join us and more people come to join us. And that's the blessing of being able to have everything in one place so that all of the programs, all the activities, all the services, where we are, that we're here and ready to serve. And it's grown incrementally, and we're grateful, constantly grateful. But we're really glad this morning, Dave Schofield, who was our light department manager, agreed to come in and speak with us again, but not only about his work here, but the very, very important work that he did in St. Thomas, and not the first time, but as they continue to recover from the hurricanes that they had. It's just, I had been at a board meeting at Elder Services last week, and there's a gathering still through Elder Services to make sure that materials are being sent and support services being sent to elders of Puerto Rico. And what people are still living with is just very, very touching. It's not good yet for so many people. But then on another note, did everybody sign the card for Ken Noonan? Did I get everybody? Good. Mr. Noonan turns 103 this month, and we've always celebrated his birthday together. This is the first year that he's not with us for his birthday, so we'll make sure we get the card, and thank you all for doing that. And next month, our school resource officer and Georgetown police officer, Henry Olszewski, will be our speaker, to talk about school resource work and his work here in town, and he's very personable and amiable, and you'll really enjoy meeting him too. And lastly and finally, Dave has been working with me. The light department is going to donate a widescreen, flat screen TV that will be in our pool room. So it'll be on the wall so we can move it around for programs and activities. It's going to be a smart TV, so it will be able to talk with the internet. We'll be able to do movie and a lunch, pizza and a lunch, and or other we can literally use it for training or for other programs as well. So we're very grateful. That's been a lot of planning on Dave's part with his contacts, and I've appreciated every step of it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. There'll be an upgrade from the TV. You got to land that.
Yeah. So. But it's been okay.
Hey.
We rolled it on its card.
There you go.
So I'm going to turn to you to go get some more cleaning. If
okay,
anybody
sure.
needs any more coffee, I'm going to roll it in the kitchen, but I have some coffee. Does anybody need any more coffee?
All right, thank you, Colleen, and thank you for having me. This is my third time speaking at the...
But he's a good friend.
Yeah, I always enjoy it, and it's my third time speaking at this breakfast. First time in this facility, though, and it's great to see that...
That's true.
Yeah, I had to be shown to to the room. I didn't even know where I was going. So this is great, and thank you again for breakfast. It was delicious as usual. So again, I'm Dave Schofield, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the general manager of the Municipal Light Department here in town. And I've spoken a couple of times, usually just kind of giving you my bio and my background for those that have been here before when I've spoken. And a part of that bio that people find interesting is that back in 1995, I went to the Virgin Islands with a military team for a hurricane restoration effort on St. Thomas for Hurricane Marilyn. And I met my wife Tamara, who was serving here this morning, there. And you know, for unfortunate reasons, my father-in-law is also in the room, David, in the back behind the distinguished selectman, because of these recent events down there, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. So this hurricane season was epic, hyperactive they call it, and it took a lot of property and a lot of lives. And we were thankfully insulated from it, because sometimes these things bounce right up the coast and they hit us, and that's what I was watching as your light plant manager with a lot of interest. So you may or may not know that Hurricane Irma and Maria, they devastated the Caribbean and Florida. I don't know the monetary numbers, all of them, but it was between September 16th and October 3rd. They pretty much wreaked havoc through all through the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Florida. So in Maria itself, the last devastating storm was by far the deadliest storm in 2017. It did a lot of damage in a lot of places, but what I want to talk to you about is St. Thomas. So I ended up back down there, much like 1995, but with a group of public power personnel. So why, right? The Water and Power Authority on St. Thomas is a public power entity, much like Georgetown Municipal Light Department, Groveland, Rowley, Littleton. It goes on and on. There's 40 in Massachusetts. And we have pledged mutual aid to each other all around the nation, should we need it. And basically we promise that if you really need us, we'll come. So before we went down to St. Thomas, and people forget because of that devastation down there, Florida got hit pretty bad too. We sent resources, that group, the public power group, sent from all over New England under an organization called the Northeast Public Power Association. And all the New England states gave men and equipment to this effort. So we first went down to Florida for a couple of weeks, and because of logistical reasons, we were able to really put that state back together in a short period of time. They had unbelievable issues down there, but linemen came from all over the country, and they made short work of that. It was really quite amazing. We brought our resources home. We had trucks driving all the way down to Florida. Part of the traveling of the men and equipment is part of the story too. It's difficult. You're moving all these assets into place and then getting them, and they go into this high tempo work-sleep cycle where they're trying to just sustain themselves and keep working as long as they can, be as productive as they can. So we went down to the Florida. I sent crews. I was the coordinator up here. I didn't personally go to Florida, but I coordinated 8 crews, and a crew is basically 2 men in a truck, usually a bucket truck, but it can be a digger derrick as well. And I sent them down to New Smyrna Beach, Bartow, Lakeland, and they were down there for a couple of weeks and did wonderful things and came back. That group consisted of linemen from Middleton, Georgetown, Groveland, Rowley, Marblehead, Ipswich, Danvers, Wakefield. It was a group of us all working together, different linemen working with each other on different pieces of equipment. It's a testament to their versatility. So we still had the problem in the Caribbean, and that brings logistical problems of another tier, many tiers higher. Very difficult. Trucks have to be barged over there. You really can't fly them. I mean, it's possible to fly them, but it's an enormous cost. So you're barging equipment over, you're flying men down there in an airport that wasn't open. When these hurricanes hit in the Schofield house, it was 2 things happened immediately. My wife, who is a woman of action, became like a caged animal. She's worried about her parents, one of which is in the room, and trying to get them home. She also started an effort to acquire goods and send them down there. And she used our garage as a shipping container and filled it with donations. The people of Georgetown were amazing, and other communities. And I'm going to pass some pictures around too. Our selectman in the room, Doug Dawes, is my next door neighbor. He helped load one day, and I actually have a picture, Doug, of you and I doing that. So that was what was going on there. And when she wasn't trying to figure out a way to get my in-laws, David and Suzanne, safe and out of that environment, because you had 2 Category 5 hurricanes that hit within 12 days, Dave, 2 weeks, roughly that time. So to put it in perspective, when I see a weather forecast up here, where I'm not real nervous until I see gusts over 50, 60 miles an hour. That's our distribution system. It's very well built up thanks to my predecessor, Wayne Snow, and then the ongoing efforts of my time there. And we're in pretty good shape, even up to gusts of 50 miles an hour. You know, we can certainly have issues, but I don't really get nervous till it goes beyond that. During these events, these events down in Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria, down in the Caribbean, you had sustained, not gusts, sustained winds in excess of 100, 150 miles an hour. Just try to imagine that. It's incomprehensible. Hopefully nobody's experienced that except the one guy in the room, my father-in-law, David. It's frightening. It does damage you really can't comprehend. So I was in Iraq in 2003. I saw a lot of damage, from combat. This was very similar. It reminded me of it. The infrastructure was damaged, much like the bomb damage and the damage from the 2 belligerents fighting in Iraq. It was that bad and worse in some cases. So you had those 2 events back to back. You had one hurricane hit, basically destroyed everything, stripped the leaves right off the trees. When you looked at the pictures afterwards, the island, beautiful green island. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to get to the Virgin Islands. Without a doubt, one of the most beautiful places in the world. It was stripped brown. It looked like the surface of the moon. It scoured the island. It wasn't green anymore. It was amazing. It was heartbreaking to see it. Those of us that spend time down there and love that area. During those 2 events, St. Thomas well, the whole Virgin Islands, but their infrastructure sustained damage of some level, up to about 90%. There were 13,000 buildings that lost their roofs. Okay, so the Virgin Islands is an American territory. They're American citizens. Their population's roughly about 100,000 in that neighborhood. St. Thomas, the most populated island's got about 50 or 60,000 on it. Imagine Quincy, 100,000 people, sustained damage like that. The electrical infrastructure, about 90% of it was on the ground. Okay, so basically no power to anybody, and not any, you weren't even gonna get a whiff for months, okay? That was gonna happen. I talked about the difficulties of getting linemen and equipment down there. They just couldn't do it on their own. They needed massive assets, an influx of assets, and that's where we were already starting to coordinate this effort for St. Thomas while we had resources in Florida. I say we, it was me and some other managers from the public power entities in New England. And you're dealing with FEMA, you're dealing with the government. It's, as you can imagine, it's challenging, to say the least. So the whole effort down there started in October and ended December 16th. And it wasn't because we were finished. We just had to get out of there, we being the public power entities of New England, because our storm season was coming. And we had trucks that were in rough shape by then. We were working 90 plus hours a week, 13 hours a day, 7 days a week. The tempo was unbelievable. It was, once you got into it, it was really, you ate, got cleaned up, your head hit the pillow, and it was almost like 5 minutes later you were up. You were starting all over again. It was one of those things. You got behind on the sleep. I was there for 6 weeks. It was tough. I was diminished, to say the least, when I got on that plane and got home. There was no way to get the sleep back. You tried to perform at some decent level. So Maria itself, 90, 100 plus miles an hour, 5 to 10 inches of rain. I have pictures here I'm going to circulate them. It's amazing. I mean, if we lost a bank of transformers downtown, it just happened yesterday in one of the towns. Some truck hit it, if you saw it on the news, a truck hit a pole and it dumped a bank of transformers on the street. That's a big deal. It is. I'd have Clean Harbors in here. There'd be oil on the street. I mean, it's a big, big problem. It's big news. This was around every corner in St. Thomas. Leaking transformers, the oil was long gone. I mean, it was an environmental disaster as well. And that's just the electrical infrastructure. I can't imagine some of the other infrastructure coming apart and the damage that it did. The islands are very resilient. I mentioned that they were scoured brown right after the first hurricane and then the second one. But by the time I got down there, a few weeks later, it was green again. It grows so fast down there. The infrastructure, the poles and the wires that had fallen down were blown down that we were hoping to recover because materials were a big issue down there and still are. It was overgrown already, like jungle-esque type stuff. Amazing. But that's how resilient the islands are in that environment. So I was down there for 6 weeks, from November to December 16th, most of November and into December. I spent a 3-week tour as a safety supervisor for 60 men. Challenging, okay, exhausting, the heat, we had mechanical failures, everything you can think about. I mean, these guys were working. It was amazing, and I'll get into some of the statistics that I still can't believe now in the presence of the exposure to all these man hours in this environment, okay? And then the second 3 weeks I was there, I was an ops supervisor, so I actually took crews in the field. That was a lot more fun for me, because I got to kind of be like a general foreman again. You go back to my former life. It was wonderful, and it was great. It was exhausting though. So we had about 60 men down there, 30 to 40 pieces of equipment, mixed bag, bucket trucks, digger trucks, trailers, just everything so we could do our job. We were working 90 plus hours a week, high tempo. With all those man hours across all those men, we sent 2 home with dehydration. You know, we were watching them really close. And then we had like a cut and some bruises. I couldn't believe it. That's what I'm talking about. In the beginning of this event, the Water and Power Authority down at the water in the electrical utility had a lineman killed. Okay, that's what we were going down facing. That there was already a dead lineman on the island. And in my safety briefs, it was one of the first things I brought up to the group. That, you know, we have to be careful. We have to watch each other. Amazing, amazing professionalism. I relived this morning as I was printing out pictures and writing some talking points down here, and I'm still amazed at these linemen. I knew there were linemen, you know, I'm not like any other manager. I'm much like other managers. I think my staff's the best in the world. I love them, and you know, they're the greatest. But they really are. I mean, my linemen were down there, but the other linemen from Groveland, the other surrounding public power entities, just amazing. The know-how, just the working together on different pieces of equipment with different linemen. Some of them they had never worked with, ever. I mean, it was really something to see. If you're in the business, it was amazing. So, you know, given the fact that they're on a foreign system, there's energized pockets now. We're starting to energize things. We don't know the system very well. We didn't have the greatest drawings from the host utility. The heat, the exhaustion, they're 1,700 miles from home. That's what we suffered. A couple of stitches, and the dehydrations were serious, but you know, we got on top of that. Those guys are fine. But just amazing. So I tell you, you know, we do these things like in the beginning, the Florida effort. You build these relationships. You know, why do we do it? It's not a huge expense. It does take our equipment and our men. It puts them in harm's way. There's no doubt about it. We do recover the revenue. It's not like we're gifting these man hours and everything. We do recover the revenue, usually through FEMA or another government agency. Nobody's getting rich. We're just trying to recover our man hours and everything from this. So we do that. So it's not a big hit there. You do have people away from the system, which you know, it's usually fine for a little while. But the intangible benefits of, you know, when you can't replicate this experience. You can't, on any level. On our level up at the management side, or down, we had a couple of apprentices that were brand new to the business down there from a couple of, I think one was from Littleton and one was from somewhere else. But these guys, amazing experience. For even some seasoned linemen, you just can't replicate this experience. So when you get your people back, they're better. I like to say, I've been a lineman for a long time. These efforts make good linemen great linemen. They make linemen that are just okay, good linemen. I mean, you got a lot more tricks and a lot more experience in your mental tool bag when you come back. And I talked to a bunch of young linemen down there. I said, listen, you're going to run into something up in Georgetown or Groveland or Raleigh. We're going to have a bad storm, and somebody's going to say, I can't do that. And you're going to say, yeah, yes, I can. Yes, I can fit that truck in there. We can make this work, because the roadways, just the terrain in St. Thomas, it could never exist up here. Nobody would go anywhere in the winter. That everything was tight and small. You'd often have to pull off the road to let another car go by. They're very narrow. The hills are indescribable. They are. And we would chalk all 4 tires, put a truck in front of the working truck and chain it to the other truck as a dead man because we were worried about losing it down the hill. That's the incline that we're talking about. It's hard to explain. And off the road, just goes down forever. It's like it being, on the side of a mountain, literally. And, worried about losing the side of the road and having a truck go down the side where, you're talking about inclines like this. It wouldn't stop. Really challenging, very challenging. When it rains, they have a mud down there that becomes like ice. One of our injuries was a guy just walking around the truck. He didn't have any room, and he slipped on this kind of clay-based red mud. It was right after a rainstorm, and he fell down on his elbow, and he cut his elbow. It needed a few stitches. It's just things you don't think of. And we kept trying to be nimble and lessons learned whenever these things happened. And we'd have meetings and put them out. And like I said, it was amazing we didn't have more incidents. I expected them, frankly. I did. I expected injuries at least. I was pretty confident we weren't going to have anything really bad, but I was worried about it every day. It was a huge mental stress on the management team that went down there. And a lot of us had never worked together. We're down there, we don't even know each other. And we're coming because people donated talent from different municipal light departments, and we work together. Hey, I know this guy's background, this and that, and it's tough to come in there and say, okay, perform at a high level right now. But that's what we had to do. It reminded me a lot of my experiences in the military, and I always said that linemen, line crews, they would have made great soldiers. Those of them that weren't, because they just do. And it's always bad weather when they're going out for the worst things. When they're going out to address the worst problems on this system, it's always the most awful weather, or we wouldn't have those problems. Wind, cold, heat. Ironically, when we've had our hurricanes up here, those are some of the best storms to work on. I'm going on my own personal experience, because when it does all the damage, it's so violent out there you can't work. But when you go out, after a hurricane, our little baby hurricanes that we have, Dave's probably laughing inside because they don't get real powerful up here when they make it up here. But all the humidity's gone. A lot of times it's a beautiful day, and then you're out working. But most of the time, it's not that way. So working down there was different. So you have the Virgin Islands. They changed hands over the years a bunch of different times. I think it was 1917, 18, Dave, that we purchased them, probably for a reason. We had a submarine base there for a long time that we don't need anymore, but it was probably had something to do with a presence out there, the reason why we did that. So the locals on all the islands are, you take a quick ferry ride, you're in, the British Virgin Islands. You can see them from St. Thomas. So it's really tight. There's a lot of relations between them, and the locals are from the islands. Even though over the years, they've been anointed with different nationalities because the territories have changed hands. But there were certain things that you had to understand, and I had been going down there for over 20 years, so I would give like a little cultural brief. The locals in the islands are, in many ways, they're very old world. Okay, you don't walk into a room and just start discussing business right away without greeting them, asking them how they are. Almost back in the 1800s, you wouldn't do that. Now I always joke that up in the Northeast, in New England, all the please and thank yous are implied. We don't have to say them, so we just, it's understood. But you don't do that down there. And there were a lot of contractors from all over the country down there, contract linemen, and I watched them bang headlong with the locals, grunting at them and not being very friendly or nice. And my guys, no matter what, would go in, good day, good morning, how you doing, and this and that. Because we dealt with a lot of locals all levels, but we were really close to the Water and Power Authority folks that worked there. We got all our stock from them. We needed them for fuel, for all sorts of things, switching, different things, engineering on the system. So things went further if you knew their culture a little and you just, acted appropriately with these folks. And you felt a little better about yourself too, because it's a nice way to be, and it's really nice down there. Unbelievably appreciative people. Amazingly so. Okay, so imagine being out of power in that heat for a month. Just try to imagine it. And so we start working through this area, and I was checking on some crews. And this older woman who lived alone, she was a baker, she had a little business out of her house, which she wasn't baking. The house had been out of power for 3 weeks to a month. I pulled her aside, I said, listen, it may not be this week, it may not be next week. I said, but we're putting poles in here, and we're gonna, the nearest source of power was probably 1.5 miles away. We're working in this area. She said, look, what's important is that you boys stay safe down here. She said, you get to it when you can. Can you imagine one of my ratepayers up here saying that to me after being out of power for a month? Neither can I. As understanding as we are. But again, different concerns. Their power actually goes out quite a bit. It's an island territory. They have a power plant. They have a couple of submarine cables to St. John and some other smaller islands there. But that's to transmit power out. There really isn't much of a gain back to St. Thomas. So when they lose their plant or they have a problem there, their power's out until they get it fixed. They don't have a switch to close. And that's, in this town, I can configure this system a dozen different ways. And last year I've had to do it because of some problems with national grid feeds. We've lost them, and I've had the system configured during some of the storms where if we had an accident downtown, it would have taken the whole system out. Thankfully, we didn't have an accident downtown. But we have some flexibility here. There is a switch to close. There is another transmission line that I can get to. Not so for them.
Did you do any highline work?
No, well, it depends on what you consider highline. They have kind of a sub-transmission coming out of there. It's a 35,000 volt ties between their substations. That's as high as it gets there. Their distribution primary voltage is 13.8, much like ours here. So there wasn't any like lattice towers or anything like that. Their distribution structures are tall, bigger than ours. Most of you're going to see 40 footers here. You'd see 50s and 60s there.
It's on TV, all the highlines all twisted and all this.
Puerto Rico, there's problems, and different island, but there's big problems with there's problems now. Right now, fast forward, St. Thomas is probably 90+% back, I would say. I'm stabbing at it, but it's probably 90% back. I don't know where Puerto Rico is. I don't know. I know that they have serious problems to the point where they're going to sell they're talking about selling their publicly owned municipal to an investor owned. So they got some issues and maintenance issues, certainly management issues. You just don't do that. We pledge lower rates and reliability in this public power world that we live in. It should be the way. That business model works. It works here, it works at Groveland, it works in Raleigh. That's why your rates are 3 to 4 cents cheaper than Boxford and any other in the National Grid and Eversource territories. And we're pretty good at getting the power back on. Okay, sometimes it's days. I know Boxford is frustrated. So that's what's going on there. But yeah, the structures are big. It was even down there, the pressure treated poles, heavy, 50, 60 footers, tough on our diggers, especially when they're set up on inclines like this, tough on our equipment. We had the unsung heroes down there were our mechanics that we brought from public power entities. There was one from Taunton Municipal Light and Power. There was one from Littleton Water and Electric, and these guys were phenomenal. I mean, they were just, trying to get parts and everything. I mean, they're fabricating things, getting our trucks running. A lot like the military, a lot like my experiences in the military. You just do, you get it done, no matter what. Failure is not an option. And it was great to see these guys. You can't help but just really love these guys after working with them, and they're doing everything that you ask them to do. And you see them at the end of the day, and they're just filthy, exhausted. I mean, just soaked with sweat. And then they know they're gonna eat something quick, get cleaned up, and they're gonna be at it again. You know, the day started at like 4 in the morning. Yeah. So it was really something else. You know, not all seriousness down there. One of the managers, it's funny, technology changes over the years. The first time I was in the islands in '95, we had tourist maps. We had cell phones, but they were pretty new, and usually we broke them. You know, if it rained out or something, they were done. Now we get these smartphones. I mean, the GPS worked. It worked on the island. There was internet up. We could email our loved ones. We could FaceTime them. You know, see them. The technology was different. So one thing we did do is we got on these huge text threads. So all the supervisors would be on this one thing, and you'd have a little group, and you'd send out stuff. Look, this truck's down. I need fuel here, blah, blah. Does anybody know where I can get ridge pins? All this stuff. And it was back and forth all day long, right? So one of the supervisors, probably after talking to his wife on the phone, decided to text her that he loved her, but put it on our group by accident. So he shows up at breakfast, and we're like, "We love you too," you know. It was really funny, and we needed that. It was really funny. He said, "I know. I realized it at the last second." It was hysterical. There was a radio station down there called Pirate Radio, and this was the reality of it. So it played any genre of music. There'd be a country western song followed by a hard rock song followed by some disco song. It didn't matter to them, and it was kind of on autopilot. And every once in a while, a DJ would come on and say, "We're going off the air. Our generator's running out of fuel." Boom, dead air. And this is, and you know, we joked about that. Or you'd be listening to a song. You know, I'm running all over the island all the time, so I'm in my truck a lot. You listen to a song, and it would be over. And then there'd just be like 10 minutes of dead air. And you'd forget that you had a radio station on, and all of a sudden, boom, a song would go on, you know, and it'd scare you. You're like, oh, geez, you know, it was just a lot of little funny things like that. It was hard to find a cup of coffee. You know, that was a big deal. Like, where can we find, oh, I think this place is open now. There were no traffic signals when we first got down there. Now everybody's driving on the left anyway. So it was really confusing for these guys. And when I was in my safety role, that was one of the things. I said, listen, there's a couple of things you need to know. All right, you're driving on the left. There's no traffic signals. You're gonna have to kind of jump into the intersection, and it's every man for himself. Of course, we were in big equipment, and we had lights on, and usually if you blasted your strobes and everything, people would get out of your way. That was good. The locals, they walk, it's funny, they'll walk right in front of you without even looking at you. And this is the reason. Locals will stop in the middle of the street all the time. Like, even if they're dropping somebody off, they don't pull over the side of the road. This is a culture thing. I joke often with my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and my wife about it, but they'll just stop in the middle of the street. And if the guy's letting his wife out to work or something, they might talk for 5 minutes. And you're like, if you're from the Northeast, you got a real problem. I mean, you're always late, and you want, you know, so you're like, come on. I mean, all this road over here, if you just pulled over, I could have went. They don't do it. Okay, they'll also stop in the middle of the road. If they see somebody on the side of the road, they'll just stop in the middle of the street. Normally here, pedestrians wait till it's clear and they walk. But, so I said, listen, you're gonna hit somebody. They're not even gonna look at you. They'll be here, they're not gonna look at you, make sure they got eye contact like we would do here, taking your life in your hands. They'll just begin and walk across the street. And that happened all the time, and you had to experience it. Because they expect you to stop, because that's what the local population does. So these little things you had to know. They weren't, it wasn't being rude, it was just a difference in the way that they do things. It's not, the island has no highways, there's no, there's really, it's hard to get to 40 miles an hour anywhere before you have to slow down again. So everybody seems like they're going fast and they're flying all over the place, but they're not really going that fast. You can't get up speed anywhere. There's no, you can in certain spots, but it's just not like here where you get out on the highway and you go up to 75 and set the cruise control. It's different. So I know I got about 5 minutes, right?
Whatever you need.
Whatever I need? Okay. So I wanted to pass some pictures around because I was looking at it. This was just one of the crews, my crew. Notice the dog in the dog in the foreground. That's TJ Middleton. He's one of my better linemen, and he's got the tattoos. Loves animals. That dog was on Brunner Hill, a beautiful area we were working on, but it was devastated, and we had a lot of work to do up there. There's actually there at the base of a big communication tower. But it's like that pit bull kind of adopted the guys. Had a family, a lot of dogs did, and that was another side tragedy to it. There was a lot of stray dogs, and actually some of the linemen adopted them, shipped them home. They saw them, they were skin and bone, some of them were tied up, and the people had left it. Amazingly, inhumane. And the guys started feeding them, counter to my orders when I was the safety guy, and they got relationships, found out how to do it, went to the Humane Society and shipped the dogs home. Now they live up here. Incidentally, we have 2 dogs. Dave and my mother-in-law Suzanne brought 2 dogs with them, and they're living with us now. Those dogs lived their whole life in 70 degrees or higher, chasing lizards. And all of a sudden now they're in this freezing cold. They're adapting, and they're seeing a gray squirrel. What's that? I got to go chase that. Or the chipmunks and everything. I mean, just imagine these dogs. It's like a whole. We took them to another planet. So that dog, incidentally, when I showed up to check on the crew, quietly walked up to me. I was careful because there's some menacing dogs down there. A lot of them are strays. And he lifted his leg and tried to pee on my leg. So I don't know what he was telling me. He's like, this is my neighborhood, just so you know. He wasn't even aggressive about it. He just walked up and said, listen, I need to tell you something. I need to show you, who's the boss up here on this hill. Very funny. I was quick. Even though I was tired and diminished, I was able to get my leg out of there. There's a couple of different trucks. Notice the different color booms in the air. Those are 2 different trucks with 2 different crews. Those linemen never worked together before. Line work is crew-driven work, teamwork, grunts and clicks. I know you because I've worked with you all these years, and you know me. It's difficult. They might call a tool a different thing. There's my famous beard, who I was told not to bring home. Look at that, huh? I sent that picture to my wife, and she said, that beard does not come home. And
why not?
I know, that's what I said. A razor did not touch my face the whole 6 weeks I was down there. And then she proceeded to talk about something from home. She said, while you're shaving, I need you to, whatever. I said, okay, you've made your point. So there's just some of the neighborhood. You can see very hilly. That's St. John in the background.
Yeah.
I went to St. Thomas on a cruise once, and boy, they could have left me there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
During that weather.
Yeah, it is nice. And at the end, we were there. It was it's the best time, December. They call it the Christmas winds, and it's just so beautiful there. And we were acclimated. I think if I had just gone down there from this up here, I would have been hot. I'm not a big heat guy, but by that time I had been there for a month, and it was kind of a rainy, hot season, November. I was acclimated in December, which is absolutely beautiful. We were very productive. My cruise, it's just another guy in there.
Are you trying to bring this back?
This thing here?
Are you trying to bring that back slowly so that she doesn't?
So I cut it down, and this is acceptable apparently, so, but that picture is not. Notice I didn't put it in front of the camera.
Okay, what do they have for power plants down there? Diesel or fossil fuel?
I think, it's fossil fuel. I think it's oil. It's an older plant. I thought they were, I don't know, David, we were talking about going to natural gas, which brings other issues, but
Yeah,
probably be cheaper at this point.
they started a conversion to natural gas, but they never finished it.
That's right, and they should, because natural gas is really cheap. It's cheap now. It's
You need a parachute to work on those poles.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Did you have brush clearing crews with you all the time?
We used some locals, and we did a lot of. You know what? One of the first things I did as a supervisor down there is I went to Home Depot and I bought like 15 machetes, and it was a tool we used all the time down there. It's just it's that dense, and we had to recover a lot of material in the bushes, you know, because we weren't getting it. I mean, when we left, there were problems with transformers. It's just, you know, it's a combination of things. I mean, you had these awful hurricanes. We didn't even talk about Texas, right? So there's only so many transformers in the United States, and you can't just build one overnight, okay? So, yeah, Texas in Florida took a lot of line material, and then these poor Caribbean territories, nations down there, you know, it's understandable. They're not, you know, they've used up everything else, and they're grabbing it right off the lines.
What about like stakes and that?
What do you mean?
Well, when you were working on the lines and that, or in that brush?
Yep, snakes?
Yeah.
There's not, you know what, there's not, I was corrected because I mistakenly said there were no snakes down there. But there's no snakes to worry about, and Dave, tell me, but
No poisonous snakes.
I said no snakes, and then somebody found out that they do have a variety of gardener snake down there, so.
Two-legged ones?
Two-legged snakes? You know what they have a lot of down there is mongoose. Probably why they don't have a lot of snakes.
Yeah.
A lot of mongoose.
Yeah.
No
Lot of
snakes, never
iguanas.
behaved that way.
Lot of iguanas, but they're harmless. They're fun to look at. What I didn't say was this is home. It was a cruise ship, an old cruise ship that FEMA contracted. I heard for like $1 million a day, but don't quote me on that. And took all the relief workers and put them on the cruise ship, which made sense. You could feed them, you could house them, get them clean, and we could even we dropped our laundry off and it got done for us. It was a good way to go. The food was decent, and sometimes even the little bars were open. So if you had some time, you could get a beer before you went to bed.
That was the question I was going to ask. Well, how about the living quarters for you people down
Yeah.
there? So apparently you did all right.
It was good. When I was there in '95, they didn't do things like that. The focus was getting the resorts back on so they could house the relief workers. The resorts took a beating, so I don't think it was an option this time. It would have been really tough. You'd be living in resorts with no power. It'd be tough on the crews. They'd be less productive. It would hurt the whole effort. So like I said, that was pretty common. You just see transformers all over the ground. We tried, even the transformers that survived and they were still hanging in the air, we would throw them in and they would blow right back at us.
Yeah.
Because if you can imagine that type of trauma on a pole that survived, I mean, it would have shaken that transformer. You know, if you had some of them survived. The smaller ones had trouble. We noticed that the larger ones were. We had testers, little like no-go testers. We'd test them to try to get a good good idea whether they were gonna blow back in our face or not, which isn't pleasant for any lineman. Here's just some pictures, very beautiful, beautiful place.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's, you know, some of those roads, if you notice, that truck's, with its cones, is halfway out in the other lane.
Huh.
Very sunny.
Scary.
These guys were great.
I was only there for a day before, like I said, I loved it.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful place. I've been going there for over 20 years.
Jesus, they are narrow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's actually a pretty wide road right there. They get crazy. This here is a special piece of equipment that we brought down to these two, called a pressure digger. You notice it isn't like the digger trucks you see us out on the roadway. It's the digging down there is awful. It's very, very what we call bony and rocky. And we brought this. You'll see it coming down. This is a special piece of equipment. Almost looks like a pile driver, and it's a pressure digger, and it can give us an excavation that we couldn't get with a regular utility bucket, utility digger derrick. And there's Georgetown truck 5 right there, who did a couple of months down there. It's right now I have it in the shop. They're going through it because it wasn't easy on the equipment. That's a lot of man hours, a lot of hours to put on these equipment in that heat. But again, that was, I mean, look at the transformer hanging off the pole by its lower bracket.
It's a livable place.
That's
You're gonna have to mess it up.
that's common. That was common. I mean, if you reported that to me, we would be responding to something like that very rapidly, okay, to take care of that. But that was all over the island. You know, you had to get to it when you got to it. Look at this, hanging from its leads
Oh,
in midair. Don't get under that. I've been there many times. We had some meetings over there. I was over there a couple of times, but not to do much. At the end, the last day there, I was one of the last guys to walk off the island out of our group. Once we got the guys on the plane, we said, let's go have lunch over to St. John, and we did. Then we went down to the beach, but there wasn't a lot of that. We were there for Thanksgiving, and we were allowed to give the guys a day off on Thanksgiving. The Water and Power Authority fed us on Megan's Bay, if anybody's been down there. One of the most beautiful beaches in the world. And it was really nice to give these guys a break. They needed it. And it was great. So another thing that with hurricanes is the rain and the water and the damage that it does. I'm going to show you a couple of roads, impassable, washed out. Just amazing amounts of
How long did it take to get the trucks down there?
It took a long time to get them down.
You had to drive?
Weeks. We had to drive them to Fort Lauderdale and get on a barge in Fort Lauderdale, and it was a little tricky. It took probably a couple of weeks, I think. Getting them back, they barged them right from St. Thomas to Rhode Island. It was great. I just sent some guys down there. They picked up our truck. It was great. Here's another one.
To there, on the barge, how long it take them? Roughly.
A few weeks, a couple of weeks. Yeah, wasn't too bad. That's that washed out road, Dave, is Megan's Bay Road. And we couldn't get down there, those roads, and it was, you travel through all over the place, and and you'd come into that, you'd have to back up, try to turn those trucks around on those hills and those narrow. Sometimes you'd just back them up for half a mile, sometimes around. Yeah. Oh, where's Pete? You wouldn't want to hear that.
It'd be like trying to turn around on Mount Washington.
Sometimes impossible. That was one group down there. They're given that signal they're given right there is a local thing. VI, right there.
Yeah.
And they're all giving it right there. And that was, we got real tight with our counterparts on the local side. Here's Scrapper. She's one of our transplants. She's now a New England dog.
Looks like what I have.
And this is, so she spent her life in the warm weather, chasing lizards, all that, and all of a sudden she's up here in the,
Freezing her ass
I know, right, cold. And this was us loading up supplies we were gonna send down there just for the relief effort through the United Way that my wife Tamara headed up. And here's our distinguished selectman helping me out with it. He was helping load that truck that day.
Fuel must have been a problem, getting fuel for the vehicles?
Fuel wasn't too bad. They were able to get fuel, the plant was running, so they were able to get fuel to come in. We fueled at the plant, and the gas stations rolled, and that, surprisingly, you'd think, everything has to be shipped into the island. And we were able to get fuel. Materials, line materials were a problem. Wire. If you had wire, you didn't have transformers. If the transformers come in, you didn't have poles. If the poles were there, you didn't have wire. You never had everything at once. So we had to work kind of inefficiently. In the last couple of weeks I was there, we were running wire, setting poles, and doing everything we could, even hanging the two bracket bolts for the transformers sticking out of the pole, but we had no transformers. So when we left, the contractors took over. They literally, once the transformers come in, they go over, hang them, connect them, and they would pick up all these people. And my crews, we had a day where I had about 8 crews. We picked up 100 houses. We energized 100 houses one day. I mean, we didn't do it every day, but one day we did. And it was just amazing. Think about that. 100 families. That could have been 400 people that you energized that one day. They were just amazing. My guys. I had on my crew, I had Taunton linemen, I had linemen from Burlington, Vermont. I had my own. Ipswich linemen, I had linemen from Groveland. Just amazing guys, productive, I mean, focused on what we were doing. Yeah, I couldn't be more proud of them. I'm still so proud of them. So, you know, that was it. Really happy to do it. Like, you know, like I said, if we ever get, I don't know that we're gonna get any Virgin Island linemen up here at any point, but certainly if we had a bad ice storm or one of these hurricanes kicked up the coast, missed Florida but hit us, those Florida linemen that we worked on in the beginning, they're coming. They're coming to Massachusetts. They're coming to Connecticut. They're coming. They've already said it. They appreciated so much what we did. I mean, think about it. We went down there, that, you know, in those dark houses when they went to work with it was their families, their kids, their parents. So when we went down there and did our thing, we built a bond with these linemen. And if we ever need them, they're getting on 95 and heading north. These are the things, the relationships that we build. They'll have to pick up a jacket on the way, but they'll come, and we're very confident of that. Does anybody have any questions about this or anything pertaining to the light plant power?
It's like Marbell years ago. They used to go any place in the whole country.
And they still do. Verizon, yeah. When we go out on storm, Verizon, Comcast, those linemen go out too. They're doing their thing too. They all rush to the problem, take care of it, and then you go back. Yes?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Love coming.